So on behalf of the Cooperative Monitoring Center here at Sandia National Laboratories, I want to welcome you to our virtual CMC seminar series, addressing the present and the future of scientific collaboration to advance global security and peace. My name is Amir Mohaigegi, and I'm the Managing Director of the CMC. We want to make sure everything goes smooth, so because we're really excited to hear from our today's speaker, especially making time out of his evening. So about a few ground rules here. First, remember this is an unclassified event. Please keep all your questions and comments unclassified. Second, please mute your mics during this presentation to avoid any accidental interruptions. Third, if you have a question for the speaker, please email it to cmc@sandia.gov. That's CMC for Cooperative Monitoring Center. Our moderator is Sandra Spence. We'll try to ask as many questions as possible during the Q&A, which is actually the fun part of the discussion here. Lastly, if this meeting fails, and it has failed in multiple ways, if you cannot hear the speaker, the easiest thing to do is exit the meeting and re-log back in. Our apologies in advance for any technology challenges. So with all those ground rules out of the way, let me introduce our speaker and moderate today's event. Please welcome Ms. Sandra Spence. Sandra, you have the screen. It's all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amir. And again, welcome everyone. We're looking forward to today's event. The CMC at Sandia National Laboratories was created to demonstrate how technological cooperation can build trust. It provides a forum where experts can collaborate on these scientific solutions to international security problems. For more than 25 years, the CMC has hosted and worked with experts from around the world to promote peace and security through science diplomacy. The CMC welcomes scientists and experts that are thinking across boundaries and beyond traditional problem sets to apply cutting-edge science, engineering, technology, and that's going to strengthen international nuclear security. Our current seminar series has focused on the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, and it's included both current and former members of this organization. Today's speaker, Mr. Kristóf Horváth, is currently the head of the Nuclear Materials Security Unit at the IAEA. He joined the IAEA in 2017 as a senior nuclear security officer, and in this position he was responsible for the agency's International Physical Protection Advisory Service, that's a mouthful, or IPPAS missions. He was also responsible for regulation development, threat assessment, design basis threat, and multiple other nuclear security related issues. So after the talk, like Amir mentioned, we were going to moderate a brief question and answer session with our speaker. So with that, I will turn it over to Kristóf. Thank you so much for your presentation and sharing your insights today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very nice introduction. Now I try to share my screen. Can you just please confirm that you can see my screen and my presentation?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Everything is okay. Because you know I can't see now you. Okay. So I start. So in my so my name is Kristóf Horváth, as it was mentioned. That was an introduction of my IAEA career. I started here in 2017. Before that, I had a really strong regulatory background. I worked for the Hungarian regulator, where I was responsible for not only, as I was promoted, not only for security, but also for safeguards, radiation protection, and nuclear safety. I left the Hungarian authority as a deputy chairman, and then I moved here at the agency. So I'm also, but it was mentioned that currently I'm the unit head. It's a very new promotion for me. I just got this position on 1st of January this year. So that's when I joined this team. And this nuclear materials security team is responsible for the security of nuclear materials and also nuclear facilities. So any type of nuclear facilities and any type of nuclear material. But since we have a section which is responsible for the regulated materials and facilities, so it is divided to 4 smaller units. One is responsible for the nuclear, which is mine, and there is another one for the radioactive material, one for the transport, and there is one for the cross-cutting, where these missions and those areas which are more horizontal and covering all type of material and facilities. Actually, I worked there earlier. So in this presentation, I'd like to briefly speak about the nuclear security program, but really briefly because at least I think that you know a lot about this program, and also that it's more for the Q&A in order to openly discuss certain issues if you have any question regarding the work of the agency. So very rapidly, I'd like to give you an overview of the IAEA and the activities and certain conclusions. So the IAEA is a specialized agency within the UN family. So it means that this is not a UN sister, but all the rules are similar to the UN. So we are international civil servants who are working for the agency. And it was created in 1957. This is the Atoms for Peace organization. It promotes the safe, secure, and peaceful nuclear technologies. Later on, I would like to give you how we see the safe, secure, and peaceful a little bit. And then currently, there are 172 member states of the agency. So almost all countries are member of the agency. Where I think there are approximately like 210 or something. So this is a scientific and technical cooperation forum for the peaceful use of nuclear technology. The headquarters is in Vienna, but there are also offices in Tokyo, Seybersdorf. We have a laboratory. We have in Monte Carlo one, and then one in Canada. The personnel is approximately 2,500, and the financial resources is the regular budget is around 500 millions. But there are also additional funds, and the security fund is special because that is based on the voluntary payments of the member states. So coming to these three main pillars, so one is the safety and security. And as I was responsible for safety and security as well, for me, these two things are not that far from each other. So what we can say that from certain point of view, the tools and the measures what we use are more or less the same for safety and security. The biggest difference is that from how we protect the people and the environment from the harmful effects of ionizing radiation, because the fundamental principle is the same, but safety is more for these natural events, human errors, while security is the intentional. Here at the agency, even if we are in one department, which is called nuclear safety and security, but somehow we are very well separated from each other, and this is very well reflected that there are not too many documents which cover safety and security at the same time. So typically, safety and security are developed independently of each other, even if the management of the agency is striving for having more and more harmonization between these two areas. Later on, I'd like to also speak about that safety is much more mature than the security. So that's why sometimes it's not easy to harmonize with them. So when we are just speaking about like maintenance, they have 20 maintenance documents. They have even documents for the painting of the hermetic zone of the nuclear facility. And we don't have any real detailed guidance or even detailed requirements for how to maintain security systems. So the other pillar is this safeguards and verification, which is relates to the non-proliferation and the peaceful part. So the agency mandate is the strongest in this area. And the last one is the science and technology. The agency has a lot of actions on this science and technology and supporting member states in so many areas. So that is a really huge area where the science and technology are covered and relevant. Regarding the nuclear security activities, that the states determine what activities are carried out by the agency. So typically the agency has no own initiatives. Typically all these situations or all these initiatives and tasks and actions are decided by the member states. For this purpose, the IAEA has a board of governors and also the general conferences. The board of governors are sitting together more often, so that's why this is more like the executive organ, while the general conferences include all the member states representatives. And of course that there are so many other meetings which are providing advice to the agency. What is also very important that we have a nuclear security plan which is prepared together, or the preparation is coordinated by the IAEA, but it is prepared by the member states. And in this plan, the member states can prioritize the work and can provide and detail the tasks, what should be done by the agency regarding nuclear security. And all those activities are tasked to the Division of Nuclear Security under the Nuclear Security and Safety Department. This division is not more than 100 people, which means something like 60 technical officers and 40 team assistants, because as you should imagine that we coordinate a lot of activities around the world, but it's yearly more than like 500 actions and events which are coordinated, so that's why a large number of team assistants. But also these technical officers, typically they have a very wide portfolio, so that is very rare that somebody can focus on one thing. Typically the TOs are also responsible for so many areas. Of course that they are not alone responsible for one area, they are more for coordination, but it's better if you are an expert of typical, because then you can really better coordinate the work of the subject matter experts from the member states. Or the agency activities can be listed in these points, and later on I will speak a little bit more detailed in every point, but one is this guidance development. So it's a very important topic to provide the member states with the best or good practices. And then this is typically based on mutual understanding and also acceptance by the member states. So it represents somehow the best knowledge of all the member states, and this is published as IAEA guidance. The IAEA also supports assisting capacity building, and this means mainly the human resource development. The IAEA provides so many training courses and workshops for the member states. And then also these consultancy meetings are also a good forum, actually, that when the more advanced experts can collect together and support the agency's activities. And also, of course, that not the agency staff are going for the trainings necessarily, but typically the experts from the member states are supporting the agency and providing lectures and also helping us to develop training materials, e-learning materials. Peer reviews and advisory services are a very important topic. One of them is this IPPAS, which was already mentioned, this International Physical Protection Advisory Service, which is a 2-week review in a member state, when during 1 week actually that we go through on the state system, and also we visit facilities. And then in the second week we prepare and agree the report. And the report is important from that point of view that it provides recommendations and suggestions to the member state how to better comply with the IAEA recommendations and guidance documents. We also have research and development activity, or coordination of research and development activity. It is very important from that point of view that in this research and development we can involve also those states which are not that much developed. But if we are speaking about not basic research, but certain application of research thing, like for example, that if there is already a methodology developed for certain self-assessment of nuclear security culture, that's a good example. And in these R&D activities, we can also involve such states who would like to implement this self-assessment. So the R&D activity is also open for not only the best or the most developed state. Information exchange among the member states. And the last one, which is mentioned here, and this is the most, from financial point of view, the most expensive one, which is the risk reduction, because the IAEA is also playing the role to make a bridge between the donor states and those states who need certain support for the security upgrades of their facilities. This risk reduction means not only facility upgrades, but also the removal or repatriation of material radioactive sources, because that it requires a lot of coordination and a lot of financial resources from the member states. Of course, that the general objective is the facilitation of the adherence and the implementation of the international legal instruments related to nuclear security. But what is very important to highlight that nuclear security is a national responsibility. So not even the agency and not any experts from any member states can provide just certain strict advice to another member state. So it is a national responsibility. So that's why we call it advisory services, While in other area of the agency, like in safety safeguards, they may have review services, but for the physical protection or security, we speak about advisory. Just one example for like a joke that if you see a door, then first we ask actually that this door is ever closed. And then if it's closed, then we are happy. And if it's ever locked, and if it's locked even, then we are also very happy. We are even happier. But if there is no door, then maybe we can provide the recommendation that this is a door is needed here. If it's closed so often but not locked, then we can provide a suggestion. But that also shows that the recommendation is the higher level advice, while the suggestion is a lower level advice. I mentioned these security plans. So these are for 4 years. The last one is for 2018 to 2021. It's approved by the Board of Governors. And then here at the agency, this division is responsible for the implementation of this plan. How this plan looks like, it's actually not long. It includes, as you see, 12 topics. One topic is the nuclear security guidance. So in the plan, those topics are prioritized, where the member states thinks that certain guidance is needed or guidance should be provided by the agency. We facilitate international cooperation, organizing conferences from this point of view. Universalization of the CPPN amendment, that's a general thing. Now, as we reach that the amendment is also ratified and entered into force in a sufficient number of states, so that was a big achievement of the agency. We provide expert services. The expert services and the advisory services, the difference is that in the expert services the scope is much smaller. So there, if the member state has one certain problem or certain issue, then they can invite the agency to help them how to solve this situation. This is typically an expert service. By the advisory service, as I mentioned, this IPPAS, which is much more in scope point of view, and also it means 8-10 people are going to the state to make this interview, and then in this case all the other competent authorities and also the facilities are involved to the work of the review team. Information management, it does not mean only paper-based, but also the computer security belongs here. Computer security is an emerging issue, so it's getting more and more important from many points of view. Originally, it was very relevant for the nuclear facilities, but now even for the radioactive material and radioactive material associated facilities, it is relevant. Nuclear security of materials and facilities, it's an important topic, very important one. Currently, our system is more general from facilities point of view, and not facility specific. There are a few documents which are facility specific, but as, for example, now it's very popular to speak about this SMRs or modular reactors, so also the agency should provide certain answer regarding the security of such facilities. Earlier, the research reactors were more on the focus. Also, we should mention that the nuclear security is not only the regulated material, but also those which are out of regulatory control, what we call MORC. And that is also one section here at the division, which is responsible for MORC-related issues. So then actually that is crime scene management, what to do at the borders, a lot of detection, actually the planning, how the emergency response should cover if a source is lost, or then a terrorist event occurs, or a radioactive bomb or something. Nuclear security networks, IAEA coordinating such networks. Education is training is the largest program, so we have so many education and training activities. And now we have a lot of e-learning activities as well. We have e-learning modules, which helps the states as well. And we already started, the agency already started to translate the e-learning modules to the official languages. And also the member states are allowed to translate to their own languages as well. For example, if certain radiation protection practices, some basic level should be, such training should be provided to border guards, then of course that is much more convenient even for the member states to use such an e-learning program for their own staff as well. And then it's very easy to train like 1,000 people at the same time. Program management is on the top. And nuclear security culture, which is nothing else just to give priority for security in our activities, to make it more effective. That is also a very important topic which is prioritized within this plan. Information exchange, one tool of that is the Incident and Trafficking Database, which is ITDB, which is a very good source of such information that what really happened in the member states. As you see that there are about 3,500 events and something like 120, 150 events per year are reported by the member states. And based on that, this information is a very good source even for the threat assessment of the states. Because then in this case, they can see that in the world, what type of threats are against the nuclear industry. Of course, that the typical events are related to radioactive sources and the loss of radioactive sources, and so often the target is not the source, but the vehicle which transport the source. But even in this case, you can get such an information. And so it's also very useful information to evaluate weaknesses in material security and also the detection capability. Regarding the member states, in order to support and assist the member states in a more coordinated manner, so that's why we use the Integrated Nuclear Security Support Plans, or INSSPs. And then if member states require certain assistance from the agency, and this is so many, so we have something like 80 INSSPs already approved by the member states, then in this case, it looks like such type of discussion like in a supermarket when the agency staff member can show all the potential opportunities how the agency can assist or support the member state, and then the member state can choose. And then this INSSP is somehow a scheduled, timely plan how one program is built on the other program and gives a very logical order how the support can be provided to the member state. Typically, all such plans include also an IPPAS mission in order to have a greater and a better view what is really needed for the member states. And in this case, it is very good also from that point of view that we can somehow avoid the overlaps within the state. So I must confess, sometimes when we go to an IPPAS mission, we identify such a situation that there are 8 competent authorities in the state. All of them are equipped with detectors. And if they need to measure something from radioactivity point of view, then all 8 competent authorities are there and they are all measuring. And of course that some of them has not too much knowledge about the use of these detectors, but they got these detectors in different programs. They got certain detectors from the agency, certain detectors from the US, others from the Canadian program, others from the UK. And that's what we would like to somehow avoid, that to have such a situation when if you have 8 measurements and also not really experts are making these measurements, then sometimes it's better if you have only one and then you can solve the situation. And so in order to prevent such type of overlaps and somehow not the most effective way of using the money of the member states. So that's why this plan is very useful. And even into the development of the plan, we typically involve those countries which play the role of the donor in this area. These plans includes 6 functional areas, which are the legislative and regulatory framework, the threat and risk assessment, physical protection regime, detection of criminal and unauthorized acts, involving MORC, material out of regulatory control, the response to such event, and sustaining a nuclear security regime. When the plan is developed, it's typically made that presentations are provided to the member state, and then there is also a questionnaire, and then based on the answers of the member states, the INSSP officer is able to draft such a plan, which is then reviewed and discussed further. When finalized, then it's accepted. The IAEA also has role on this external coordination, so there are so many organizations which have role in nuclear security, which have even internationally, they have role in nuclear security. The agency is a focal point and also trying to have the best coordination efforts with all these organizations. Regarding the support to the nuclear security framework globally, it's the CPPNM and the amendment are the most important ones, and also the production and promotion of the guidance documents of the IAEA nuclear security series. The most important international legal instruments on nuclear security are the CPPNM. I updated here the dates, so then it's 125 parties of the CPPNM, and then 162, sorry, and 125 for the amendment. These are the most important ones from physical protection point of view, but for the nuclear, we also have the Convention on the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism, and also we should mention the Security Council resolutions. While for the radioactive material, we should mention the Code of Conduct on the Safety and Security of Radioactive Sources, and it has 2 guidance documents which are also very relevant. We have one document which is very special. This is this NSS 13, which has also the other name is IPPAS 225 Revision 5, which as an IAEA document, it's recommended requirements, but since in so many support programs under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the member states somehow bind themselves to the IPPAS 225 Revision 5, so that is also has a legally binding nature for certain member states, or many member states. We have such a pyramid for the documents. We have fundamentals, recommended requirements, implementing guidance, technical guidance documents. The fundamentals are one document. This is NSS 20, so there is no formal logic of numbering of the series, just one after the other. The recommendations are the 13 I mentioned for the nuclear material, 14 for the radioactive, and 15 for the material out of regulatory control. And there are implementing guides and technical guidance documents. From this hierarchy, what we cannot see actually that there are certain documents which are somehow vertical. In my way, vertical means that when they include all security management topics for certain facilities and materials. Such documents are the NSS 13 and also one implementing guide NSS 27, which is valid for all nuclear facilities and includes every topic. While we also have certain horizontal guidance documents, which are more for focusing on one topic, but for all type of material. So something like this is, for example, the threat assessment and how to develop design-based threat, which is valid for every type of facilities and material. Or nuclear security culture, which is also horizontally covering the entire nuclear security. So somehow if you see this, then we have a grid. So every topic for every facility can be found in 2 documents. And since these NSS publications are not like in a legal system, when you have a new one, then you typically modify older acts in order to keep the harmony. Here the documents are published as they are new and they are published, so not totally are in line with each other. But we have many topics which requires further development of documents. I already mentioned this maintenance, which I think are very important. You know, we already started working on the regulatory inspections and regulatory enforcement, which was also missing. If you see the safety part, then they have more than 200, 300 documents of that. So they have a lot of documents on that. And then if we would like to cover at least the most important ones, then we still have a lot of work to do. The DDG, or the Deputy Director General, is supported by a group which is called Nuclear Security Guidance Committee, and also from the member states. And this guidance committee, from one point of view, that approve those documentation profiles which are prepared as a draft, what will be, or a plan of what will be inside the document. And then if they approve, then the technical officer can start coordinating the further development of the document. And also this NSGC approves when it finishes the document, and it goes to the NSGC before it goes to the member states for final review, and then finally the NSGC also endorses again. Of course, that all the typical documents are approved by the Board of Governors finally, but this NSGC has a very important role from this point of view, that this provides a very good opportunity to discuss with the experts of member states, that they are all together and represent all member states. I mentioned these coordinated research projects. These are very good opportunities to share information. So now, for example, we are thinking to have a coordinated research program on the insider threat, just to involve as many states as possible. Also one on the SMR, that's what type of security requirements and security implementations are for the SMRs. Then, because in this case, the agency can get information from all those states who are relevant from this point of view. But as I mentioned, that since there are CRPs for implementation, Also the not the most expert states can also share their information, what difficulties they have, what challenges they experience. Are the peer review missions. I already spoke about this IPPAS, but we also have another one which is for the area of the material out of regulatory control, and this is this International Nuclear Security Advisory Service. So these two are complementary to each other, because the IPPAS does not do too much in the area if the nuclear material is lost, while the work doesn't do too much when the material is under regulatory control. So these two are, from the organizational point of view, they are very similar, both providing these recommendations and suggestions to the member states. What is very important, that the report is highly confidential. So it means that such reports, they have one copy inside the safe of the agency, and one is provided to the member state. And only the member state, that member state who hosted the mission, they can just decide how to share this information. Some countries, even in this case, decide to share it or make it publicly available. One example is Canada, where the entire report was publicly available, while other states more decide just to share with the public mainly those part which is for the competent authorities, while they think that the facility level is more confidential and they keep it secret in that information. But very important, what these recommendations and suggestions are typically a very good basis for this other plan, and to identify also where the state have further needs. So if the team identifies certain weaknesses, for example, in threat assessment, then the state can very easily come to the agency and request like a workshop on how to make this threat assessment, and then the agency can help them. And in this case, certainly the outcome of the mission fits the follow-up of the mission. I mentioned that this human resource development is a very important area, so we have so many programs on that, and then over 12,000 participants from more than 120 states were trained already. So there are almost every area we have training programs. So typically when we have a new document, then we also prepare a training program for that. That are the more standardized training program, but the IAEA also open, if a member state has certain specific requirements or specific needs, then the agency also ready, with the help of course with the other member states, to provide a very specific training program for the needs of that member state. Sometimes we provide, that was the most interesting for me, that when we provided for the highest level people, for example in Turkey, a workshop in 3 days about everything about nuclear security. So it was 30 minutes about threat assessment without question. And then that was a request that, but these were really high level people from the military and from the civil organizations to provide something like that. So we were preparing and we were able to provide according to the request. I mentioned this coordination. There are two main types. One is this international network for the nuclear security training and support centers, and the other one is for the nuclear security education network. So the IAEA is coordinating such activities, what they are doing, and then IAEA is hosting the events of these organizations. And then the risk reduction, what I mentioned, that this is the most, from financial, most economical issue to improve the nuclear security capabilities. In this case, the agency is really in the position to provide such upgrades, to provide equipment to the member states. Sometimes the agency provides equipment not for a continuous basis, but for example, if there is a major public event in the state, I make an example that when Madagascar hosted the Pope, then Madagascar requested detectors and also training. So a team of staff members were trained in Madagascar how to use these devices and how to make these necessary checks around the facility. But after the visit of the Pope, all this equipment was coming back to the agency. And then in this case, the agency can provide it to another state. While in other cases, that if they have a facility and the really security upgrade is needed, then after an expert mission and the evaluation of the situation, how is most effective to provide such upgrades, from economical point of view and also from security point of view, then the agency can provide it. Of course, it doesn't mean just spending money. So typically that the agency doesn't pay for fences, for example, because I know myself that the fences around the research reactor, then you can pay all money what you have, because then it's such a big area. Of course, that in this case, the expert mission is coming closer to the target and according to the needs, provide the most effective way of using the financial resources of the agency. And then the last thing I wanted to mention with these security conferences, which are every 4 years, and then it is getting higher and higher level. Somehow it is the continuation of the security summits, because it all typically these conferences have one day which is on ministerial level, and then in the ministers or ministerial position representatives are here and can discuss, and the other 4 days are more for the technical people and the technical topics. But this conference really attracts a lot of people. Now more than 2,000 was last time here in 2020, last year. And in order to conclude that what we should highlight from the agency point of view, that nuclear security is a national responsibility. So the agency is just provide advice and just provide support based on the request of the state. But there is no such things that the agency goes somewhere to make a review. So then it's only upon request, and every state should know, as we know that the threat assessment depends on every state. So that's why this responsibility is very clear that this is a national one. What is also important that there is no room for complacency in this serious matter, because then if in one country the situation is worse than the other one, or the security system is not strong enough, then of course that it makes a threat to the other countries, because currently it's very easy to go through between states. So then, as you know that in Europe, when we have the Schengen borders, actually to go to Barcelona is 22 hours drive from Vienna, and there are no border checking, no border control. So we cannot really say that Budapest has no terrorists, but actually that if there are terrorists in Madrid, then in 22 hours they can be in Budapest. So then in this situation, this is very require a global threat demands global response. And of course that, or most important task is to assist and further strengthen the cooperation with the member states. So with this, I wanted to conclude my presentations, and I'm really open for a discussion if something interesting you regarding the work of the agency. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kristóf. That presentation was excellent. We really appreciate your insights. So now we're going to move to the question and answer session. So I will remind the audience that you can still submit questions to that email, cmc@sandia.gov. And also, as a reminder, please do not write your questions in the chat box, but instead send them to that email so that we can address them accordingly. So the first question that we have for you, Kristóf, is if you could please talk about your view that the role security needs to play in the development of advanced reactors and small modular reactors. We received a follow-on question to this that ties into it, is if you think there are any new or unique security risks associated with ARs or SMRs.
Thank you for the question. So what, as I mentioned you, that the agency recognized that this SMR is as an important topic, and it's very relevant from many points of view. But also true that if you Google the agency website, you can find many documents on SMRs, but typically these SMRs are, or these documents are more for the safety related issues, the safety design, or for the nuclear energy related issues. But also the NSGC also started to ask the Secretariat whether the SMRs require certain extra documents, whether the recommended requirements are applicable to SMRs, microreactors, and these advanced reactors. So from that reason, the agency made a consultancy meeting at the end of 2018. But that time, the consultants concluded that after carefully studying the publications which were published that time, that they cannot find anything which which makes the implementation of the requirements or these recommended requirements impossible for this type of reactors. But they also draw the agency attention that maybe later when there will be more information on the design of these SMRs, then we need to do more. And then I think it was the time now that we started this activity. So now we just advertised the position for an SMR expert, a consultant. And now we would like to collect the subject matter experts from the member states and then start a CRP on to sharing information. But the most important thing that actually that we need to make a real analysis that what are those attributes. But if you try to identify certain attributes which are attributing nuclear facilities, like for example the location, is it a remote location close to a power or a town? Of course, the research reactors may be in a remote location close to a town. In this case, what is the difference how to implement the security measures or the number of employees? If there are 2 employees or 2,000 employees, of course the access control system should be different from the implementation point of view, but the main principles how the access control should work and what the objective is more or less the same. So what is our expectation regarding this SMR consultant and for the future, that we would like to make a real good analysis based on all this information now available from the design of these SMRs. But you also need to know that there are like 60 SMRs currently, and now 4 or 5 are very close to deployment. But so it will be a big topic, but we are very open that if you are interested, I mean, Sandia experts are also interested to be involved in this work, then we would be very happy that if you can share your advice. And of course that after this analysis, we can decide whether we need a new technical guidance or that or not. And then if needed, then it will come a training program and also this will be delivered to the member states. So currently, what we see that all documents are more or less applicable to the SMRs. We have certain specific documents for research reactors and are very specific to certain research reactors. So in this case, it's possible that we will provide a document for SMRs, but currently we don't have such things.
Great, thank you. So the next question that we have is a bit higher level. So the question is, where do you see nuclear security in 5 to 10 years? And then specifically, what impact might new and emerging technologies have in that space for nuclear security?
So in the agency lifetime, 5, 10 years, not too much actually. At least you know that even to develop a document, it requires like 3, 4. So I don't think that will be a big change within 5, 10 years. But of course, what we see that the computer security is coming up, so it's more and more important to have computer security. But I also see that we have topics which are still missing. I mentioned this maintenance, but that is one topic which is very relevant for safety. There are conferences, this aging management. We don't have too much on aging management in security. Also, that how to this environmental qualification. The safety equipment, they have a really detailed program how to evaluate them to the external events. We have nothing on that. So then we have a requirement that it should work all the time and it should be very effective, but nothing else. So from this point of view, I think that we have very clear view what we should have. So we need certain very basic documents we should prepare. We should review the documents as well. And of course that the new and emerging technologies are, from one point of view, means that the facilities are getting better and better. So from this point of view, the security risks are different. So the material, the enrichment is getting lower, so lower risk. Also the physical protection, if from the very beginning, like this security by design principle is covered, and it's getting easier. But also, of course, that from the threat point of view, that there are new technologies like these drones, for example. So the agency is also taking care of that. And of course, they're trying to develop such publications when these new technologies may also work. So it doesn't require the immediate change of the document. So as the document development is very lengthy, so we also taking care with the member states to make documents which are valid at least for 10 years. So that's what I think, but so I cannot see too big issues on this area, I think that those principles what we have, they will be valid even for 5-10 years from now. But we already see that what are those areas when we really need to work a little bit more and then provide guidance. In so many member states, this security is just started. So many member states, they just started to have a security system or a security regime. So of course that they should also reach certain level on that. But also from the developed states, we can learn more and we can go for that direction to provide the best practices for these states as well.
Thank you. So the next question that we have is, how does the design basis threat play into non-proliferation concerns?
It's a really interesting question, because you know that the non-proliferation is, as we call safeguards or non-proliferation, they also have a design, but the design for non-proliferation is more like a time. So it means that how much time is needed to divert from peaceful to non-peaceful. And more or less that's the design. And also that is a big difference between security and safeguards, that the safeguards is more for state actors, while the design or the security is for the non-state actors. But there is also an overlap. So the question is valid from that point of view, that is an overlap on that the non-proliferation also, if you read the non-proliferation treaty and even documents on non-proliferation and safeguards, that they are also speaking about terrorists and some non-state actors. That is one thing. Also, when we speak about like nuclear material accounting, or even just on a facility level about the security, then of course that even if the non-proliferation is a state level issue, but the state somehow fulfills the requirements or the provisions undertaken on a state level by asking the facilities to be safe and don't divert peaceful use to non-peaceful use. So that's why the state system of accountancy and control of the state safeguard system has certainly very similar objectives like the security system. So that's from the safeguard security point of view. But as a specific from the design basis threat point of view, so the design basis threat is actually that if somebody wants to make a sabotage or wants to steal this material, against one, the facility should provide protection. So if you see the objective of the design basis threat, of course that it has non-proliferation objective as well, because in this case, the facility insider or the facility employees who can divert from peaceful to non-peaceful are insiders also from security point of view. But what I can say that certainly safeguards people can be included into the development of the design basis threat, but this is not the general practice according to my experience.
Great, thank you. So the next question that we have is asking if you can provide an update on the status of IMCIRC 225 revision 6 and the update for NSS 13.
Yeah, thank you. So the member states were requested to be together and give advice on the agency that how to do further on this. It was also a question, first of all, that whether NSS 13 revision 1 will be the same as IMCIRC 225 revision 6. Because then, as I mentioned, that these two documents are different from that point of view, that one is the recommended requirements of the agency, while the other one is more like an internationally used binding requirements when supporting states each other. But then it was decided that this will be that the two documents will move together, so then there will be no separation from the two. Currently, the situation is that the DPP was prepared because the NSGC requested that the three recommendation level documents, 13, 14, and 15, should be reviewed and revised together. But it was also decided by the member states, so it will be not a throughout revision. It will be more like certain harmonization and a very small level revision of these documents. So the DPP was just it was drafted last year. It was discussed very intensively, like 2-3 weeks ago. So now the work will start. So then the experts from the member states will go through on all 13, 14, and 15, and they prepare a new version of course, that it will go through then all the committees in the agency, then 120 days to the member, or 120 days review of the member states. So it will require a lot of time, but it started, will be one document, and then the main frames of the revision already settled.
Thank you. The next question that we have is talking about placing an emphasis on integrating safety, security, and safeguards, so 3S. At one point, the IAEA was placing an emphasis on that, so can you give a status of that initiative and any thoughts that you might have on potential conflicts or leveraging opportunities within the concept of 3S?
Yeah, you know that I mentioned you that I'm from a regulatory body. I was the big fighter of this 3S because I'm sure that in a state which is smaller than yours, and actually that we don't have too much resources, then in this case we should integrate safety, security, and safeguards. So it's not possible to send a safety inspector, next day a security inspector, and next day a safeguards inspector for certain smaller facilities. I don't say a nuclear facility is specific from this point of view, but even I think that like radiation protection. So if you go for an inspection to a facility, then and this can be made in 4 hours, then one inspector should do everything. So I think that the integration is needed. The integration is also important, I think, that from the methodologies point of view, what we are using. So here at the agency, this word integration is not actually the most attractive word. So now we mentioned more or less interface between them. We started now a project on the interface between safety and security. So that's a big issue to identify that where are those areas where these synergies can be the most utilized or benefited. And this is not that far from the integration. In the agency level, you should also see that this is a big difference, that the safeguards, the mandate of the agency is very strict. So the agency can go to the Security Council if something happens. In the field of safety, even they can have a safety report, or even during the review, they can review that the safety standards are not fulfilled. In the field of security, we recommend or suggest something that, okay, that you can do it better. So then from this point of view, also not so easy to make this integration. I can tell you that within the agency, I cannot feel that much of healthiness or inspiration to do this integration. But from certain technical level and certain projects, we are doing that. So then, for example, in the source-related issues, so already the NSRW, which is for the safety of the radioactive sources, and our security unit are working together. So they are doing missions together, they are doing guidance documents together, so it's starting to work. Also in this nuclear facility related issues. So now we, just before publication, we had 2 documents which we did together with the safety part. So in this case, this document is not interface on that point of view. So not only the interface issues are there, but certain topics are discussed from security point of view and also from safety point of view. So we are moving to that direction. I don't think that the document will be published by the agency soon, which will cover all 3S. Now, actually, some people started also to speak about the 4S, because its sustainability also comes like a very important S of this issue. What is more interesting that typically a member state's security and safeguards are together. So typically security inspectors and safeguards inspectors are the same. Here at the agency, we are together with safety, and the safeguards are in total separation. So that's also because from safeguards point of view, we have a lot of overlapping things, but with safety, we have this interface. So I hope that my kids will live in such a world when integration we will reach. I think that in certain smaller cases we can reach it, because everybody can understand that it's beneficial. If it's getting more and more complicated, like in a nuclear facility level, it's more and more complicated to reach such integrated level.
Great, thank you. We can definitely attest to the complicated nature of that topic, so we appreciate the answer. So we're actually just about out of time. So I will ask the final question. It's a very short one. What do you think the top 2 priorities for IAEA's nuclear security program are in the next 5 years?
Yeah, and you know that when somebody asks about what our priority in the agency, it is the easiest to answer that we would like to somehow satisfy the member states who are requesting something and more satisfy those member states who are donors and providing something. And in the meantime, to comply with all the rules of the UN. So that's our most important priority. But of course, that from our point of view, that since the most important thing I think is guidance development. So as you know that the safety a few years ago made a total revision of their own documents and made a totally new structure when they have this GSR part 1 to 7 and all these documents. So I think that sooner or later we should do the same in security. When we will reach that position that we cover all those gaps which we still have, then we should start this type of activity as well. And the other one, what I think is really this harmonization. So even within our division, I must confess that we are not totally harmonized, that we are different people. We work with totally different people. So in the unregulated material, they are working with disaster management people and border control guards and customs officer. But we are speaking with security experts, security guards. So these 2 parties are such different from each other, so it's not easy to reach such type of harmonization, but I think that we should do as well. And then we do a lot of activities to somehow enhance the level of security and the security regimes in those states where they don't have a really good regime. And then you know that a few years ago, Asia was more or less the target of the agency, but now there are so many African countries. So in Africa, there are like 50 countries. So it's like 1/3 of the agency member states. And we provide a lot of projects to them. So they are actually that in that shoe that in so many states, actually, they are just starting to use radioactivity and starting to use for diagnostic or therapy point of view. So in these states, this enlarge or enhancing safety and security is a very important priority of the agency.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So that is going to conclude our session today. So we appreciate everyone's time and participation. Specifically, thank you, Kristóf, for your presentation as well as your fantastic answers to the questions. As well as to our audience, thank you for submitting all of those questions. We very much appreciate it. So before we conclude, I do want to just finally mention that you can find out more about the Cooperative Monitoring Center and the ongoing work that we have by visiting cmc.sandia.gov. And so finally, thank you from all of us at Sandia CMC for joining us today, and we hope to see you at future events. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a very great pleasure for me. Thank you very much.